when you brings that back. So we'll move on to your other one that you show me, which is you said it that maybe one of them was wrong. Was that as in you
Oh
sent me the
no,
wrong one?
no. I had two versions of Gary Starlight Sings the Blues, and there was one I did for the Christchurch Jazz and Blues Festival, and then there's one I did at the Nelson Jazz Festival,
Ah, I
and
see.
that's the poster for the one that I did at the Nelson Jazz Festival, which was a
Gotcha.
bit later.
And so I guess we'll give a little bit of background as what Gary Starlight is. He is a character that you portray
Yep,
in all manner of cabaret and stand up, and he does his own solo shows.
yep.
Anything else I've missed?
That's pretty much it. He has an ego that only a solo show can provide.
Well, that was
Um,
the my first thing I saw you do. I think it was called Off Book, which was at the temporary little Andromeda. And
yeah,
what I found really funny is that you had roll up banners of was it yourself
Gary.
or was it Gary on the beach with his
Yep,
shoes off and he was sort of frolicking.
yep,
And
yep.
I just saw that and that told me everything I needed to know about the character.
Absolutely everything. Like the imagery for that was so great.
It
It
was
was
awesome, yeah.
I first created Gary Starlight in 2012 as a minor character in an improvised wedding reception, and he was the wedding
Oh,
singer,
yeah.
and just loved that character so much. And so the next year, 2013,
So you've been
was
doing
the
Gary for
10 years.
10 years.
Yep.
Wow.
That was the year of the Gary Starlight Christmas special, which is where he was fully born in a
Oh,
full-length solo improv show, which is incredibly challenging. And also, big disclaimer, it's never a solo show.
because
Like,
you've got your
I've got a
musician.
musician
Yeah.
and I've got the audience. Like,
Yes.
if you're doing improvised musical comedy, you're never alone because you've got your musician or your band there.
Yeah.
And so I've been really lucky to have worked with some of the best, the best improv musicians out there.
Because that would be
Um,
a special skill set in itself. I guess to further clarify the character, Gary Starlight performs improvised music and a little bit of patter and banter in between the songs.
yeah.
And
So the gimmick with Gary Starlight is that he is a failed, if he was ever successful, singer, songwriter, entertainer who has had a very tempestuous or tumultuous career in showbiz. And it just so happens that at any time he does a show, there's people from his past in the
oh,
audience
yeah.
members, and they happen to be particularly significant to him in some way.
There you go.
And
That's
so
a little
he
bit.
then sings a song that was inspired by them.
Gotcha. And when you were coming up with the character, was he fully formed from the go, or have you built up bits and pieces over the years?
Fully formed.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically we wanted I wanted a high status character because if you're doing a solo show, you have to have high status in terms of you have to be confident and in control of the room, but not negative high
Hmm.
status
Yeah.
because it's really easy to be like controlling or mean or
Hmm.
to have that arrogance
Yeah.
reflect in sort of cruelty and stuff like that. But I don't like that, or at least I'm not very good at it. I'm not very good at being a dick
Yeah.
to the audience.
Gotcha.
In my own perception, maybe I am a dick in my personal life, but on stage, I love to be very appreciative. And so basically, I just define Gary Starlight as a guy whose ego is the room. His arrogance is so big that you're already in it. And so, in the fact that you're there, he sees his own ego reflected back at him. He loves everyone because he assumes that they all love him as much as he loves himself. That's his mission statement. That's the key to the character, is that he loves you because he knows that you love him.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, and so basically that way, when I have an interaction with an audience member, I'm not getting them in trouble or making them feel bad. If there's ever an audience member who is not into it, first of all, I won't approach them in the first place. It's pretty easy to spot someone who doesn't want to be talked to.
Oh, yeah.
Or you can go, or you can make eye contact and start and make like a 10 millimeter movement towards someone. And in those 10 millimeters, you'll know. you'll
Hmm.
know. And then that's when you just adjust your eye line to someone else and keep moving. And you might end up walking on a big arc as opposed to the straight line you started on, but you'll find someone at the end of that that you can actually have a conversation with. And then some of them want to get up on, some of them can come up on stage with you. They want to get up on stage with you, or they'll stay sitting where they are and you just sing to them from there.
Oh, so you'd sing
And
to them with
oh
you
yeah,
sort of serenade them kind of
oh
thing.
yeah, if it's a love song,
Oh,
like
yes.
Gary's had many of his first wives in the audience,
Oh, yeah.
and he's had like it's great, and it's a treat because he's oblivious. Like he's not an idiot. He's basic. I mean, he's basic. He's basically Justin Bieber, but without the money to have gone completely off the rails. Like you
Mm,
think about those people that become pop stars at such an early age and get
yeah.
divorced. They get divorced from reality.
Yeah.
And that is the thing. Gary Starlight is very much in the Gary Starlight bubble. He
Yeah.
assumes that everyone there is a massive fan. So when finds out that these are people that are seeing him for the first time, it's like, wow, these people have loved me, and this is the first time they get to see me live. What a treat for them.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, right? It's all about like it's all crowd work is the technical term in stand up. It's about interacting with the audience and how you doing, da 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 da. Da. But it's not about them, and I think that that gives them that sort of safety that they don't necessarily have.
That's the hard part about getting Kiwi audiences is that
Yeah.
I think their only experience with stand up and crowd work is seeing those Jimmy Carr, like Heckler owned
Oh
compilations,
yeah,
and
yeah,
they
yeah, yeah.
think you're just going to pick on them, and no amount of no amount of promising that you're not going to will convince them. They still think you're going to have a go at them.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so when I come out on stage in a wig and with a massive glittery jacket and all of that, then it's kind of like, well, there's not really that much risk because it is such a big character sort of
Yeah.
thing.
And it's almost like what is he really going to do?
Yeah,
Like what he's not going to get to your deepest insecurities in 30
exactly.
seconds and riff a whole song on that.
And he's not going to share the stage with them anyway. It's like he
Yeah.
wants them to be looking at me. He wants them to be looking at I want. Yeah, sorry, I keep figuring out. Do I talk about him in the first or the third person? But as
Kind of
Gary, I
yeah.
don't. I want them always looking at me.
Yeah.
Even if they're on stage, it's about they are there as a prop for Gary. They're not there to be interrogated or made fun of or belittled or
Yeah.
anything like that. Like any answer that they give is absolutely right and it's absolutely true, and Gary is totally cool with whatever they throw at him. And
Yeah.
it's lovely because it's there's that reputation that improv is about getting picked on and an audience volunteer has to do something embarrassing or share
Yeah.
something awkward, and that's not what we do.
Yeah.
That's not what we do, and it's not what Gary does at all.
When I was going to say the process of creating
Yep,
improvised music to me looks like it might as well be a magic for like I'm sure you have
it is a magic
mental
trick.
yeah yeah
No, I actually thought about this a couple of weeks ago. It is a magic trick because it is something that requires a whole heap of practice and training and skill, both technical
yeah.
and ingenuity, in order to look really easy.
So when
Like if you do your job really, really well, people will not realize how hard it was.
yeah.
And I mean that's the worst part of it, right? You do something that was really, really difficult, like you managed to
Uh-huh.
rhyme with orange or purple,
Yeah.
and the audience will go, that was a nice song.
Yeah.
Cool.
I've always wanted to talk to you about Gary Starlight actually. I was going to
Yeah.
say how long had you been training or practicing at doing improvised songs before you felt like it was you were ready to do a like make it into a show?
I've been preparing my whole life. No. Um, well that's the thing. Like when I was at high school, my theatre sports team ran rhyming drills because
Yeah.
we were terrified of it because we weren't necessarily good at it. I did not like singing in public until I was forced to take the lead in a musical. Like I was in the chorus, but I wasn't singing very loud. And I certainly didn't improvise songs until we were forced to in the finals because another team took our game.
Ah.
Like in the 1994 four theatre sports finals, I think it was.
Yeah.
We were all set to do like a yearbook photo because that was an easy one for us to do. It was just sitting around talking.
Uh-huh.
And the other team did it, so we decided we were going to do an opera, which is all singing. But of
Really?
course, the rush that you get from jumping off there, that sealed my fate. That was like, oh well, looks like I'm going to be singing in every scene now.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so yeah, I'm lucky in that I inadvertently had been preparing for all of that without knowing it. I mean, by the time I got to do Gary Starlight for the first time, I'd already been improvising for well over 10 years.
Okay.
And I was known to be a go-to improv singer guy.
Gotcha. Right. So
And
it was already in
so,
your wheelhouse. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it was absolutely already in my
Gotcha.
wheelhouse. But then being able to go from one song to another song to another song, that's vocal training that you have to do.
Yeah.
That's stamina. That's even in terms of rhyme scheme and song structure, you have to sort of go, okay, I can't do like the same, just rhyming A, rhyming A, rhyming B through
Yeah.
every song. I have to get a
Hmm.
bit more interesting with my lyrical structures.
So when you, in terms of, because you've watched the Would I Lie to You show before, right?
Yep,
When Lee Mack is talking about how quickly he comes up with his quips and stuff like that, and
yep,
to his perspective, it's not actually that quick. He sits there and thinks, "Oh, someone will say that," and then he waits a little bit, and then no one says it,
yep,
so he goes, "Oh, they'll say it in a second," and then when
yep,
no one does say it, he says it.
yep.
Do you feel like your mind works particularly quickly when it comes to that, or is it like an instinct and training kind of thing where you have to just trust that your training has prepared you for doing these things and like the right words are going to come out? I guess how conscious are you of
It's
what you're saying is what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing. Like it is kind of the same thing. Like there is it's a muscle, and it's a muscle that's been really well exercised
Hmm.
in terms of coming up with a rhyme and coming up and being able to listen to a melody. And again, that's why I'm saying I'm so lucky to be working with the musicians I'm working with because they will give me such a strong offer or an idea at the start of what the music is and the style and the pattern of the notes. Even if they're playing a chords, sometimes they'll even play the melody in there as well. But that's the groundwork. That's the base, and the foundation is what you build on top of that. And so yeah, I love wordplay and I love words, and I've got a pretty good dictionary in my head. And so if you hear a word, I say my first line and it's, you know, tick, 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 A, that gives me another seven beats to come up with a word that rhymes with A,
Yeah.
and more often than not, that second line won't start for another couple of beats anyway.
Hmm.
So if I've thought of the word within those first couple of beats, then I've got a sentence that lays the groundwork that makes it fit.
Yeah.
Um, and so, sometimes you do decide to live dangerously and do like a faster paced or up tempo song.
Yeah.
And sometimes, but then that's when you do the A, B, and then A, B again,
Oh yeah.
because then you've given yourself a line. Well, I'm saying a line really, really fast, but then I'm going to do it a little bit here. And then I go and say something to do with the past and I'll make up the songs by ear. You've given yourself the time. But there is that sort of dichotomy of you've still got to be talking and saying the lyrics while you are thinking. You're laying
Yeah.
railway track in front of you while you're operating the push cart, you know.
Yes. Do you
And the good thing is with improv is if it goes off the rails, then that's part of the show. That's
yeah,
the
that's
comedy.
right.
That's the proof that it is made up.
True. Yeah. I feel like, because I do this, you would have seen that show I've been promoting a little bit called This One Time. Have you seen any of the clips I've been posting from
I've seen a few. I mean, you're very good at posting clips online, so
that?
I've seen a number of them. Which ones are we? Which one?
One that you might have seen was me talking about getting a murder of magpies like under my command, or something about
Yes.
you have you
Yeah.
seen? So
Feeding
it's
them,
yeah, it's really interesting
befriending them, getting them to do jobs. Yeah.
when you do those improvised segments. I often find that I start to leave myself breadcrumbs almost that I
Yep.
might come back to, or I also might forget that I said it and then just go in a completely different direction. Do
Yep.
you ever find you also doing that where you think, "Oh, I'll throw something in there, and then if I use it, great. If not, then
Yep.
they're not going to notice."
Yeah, all the time.
Okay.
All the time. Like one of the tricks of improvisation is called reincorporation, which is where in the final stage of a scene, or is it's when you bring back ideas that were sown in
Yeah.
earlier in the story. It's not like, and then suddenly, Deus Ex Machina, suddenly a
Yeah.
helicopter came and everyone got lifted out of this hole that they dug themselves into, you
Yeah.
know. And that's the art of storytelling, is you sort of everything becomes significant later on, and then if it's not significant, it was just world building,
Yeah.
you know.
It's like Schrodinger's cat. Like it
Yeah,
might be a
absolutely.
callback, but also it's just building the world
Oh
up
yeah.
if
Well,
not.
I mean, Eddie Izzard is amazing at that. Seen some of her earlier specials,
Hmm.
and like the Darth Vader, the Death Star sequence. And then there's that whole bit where it goes on a completely different tangent and then
Yeah.
suddenly links right back to a bit that they'd done earlier. And it was like,
Yeah.
oh, chef's kiss.
Yeah. That's
And
always
that
great.
was my first introduction to long form stand-up comedy as well.
Ah,
Like watching those specials and stuff like that.
that was like,
Because
what was
yeah,
the special? Indefinite article? Is
no,
that one of them?
Dress to Kill,
Yep. Okay, I know that one.
Dress to Kill, years and years ago. Yeah,
Brilliant.
it was great.
I think that was a really fascinating. I kind of always wanted to ask you about Gary Starlight, but I just realized we didn't really talk much
Yeah.
about the posters. So again, your
Well,
trademark.
the posters are just a really good photo.
Yeah.
They're just, I've been really lucky that I like with that first show 10 years ago, we got so many photos.
Oh wow.
So because we wanted to have, all the album covers from Gary's history.
Did
And
Gary go through different musical
yeah,
styles
of
in
course,
his
because you
journey?
can't just, that's the whole point. You can't have like an hour of the same type of song. So he went through everything.
Yeah.
There would be a country song, there'd be a
A
love ballad,
grunge album.
there'd be a 90s boy band, there'd be
Nice.
power ballad. So it's everything. It's
That's
everything of
awesome.
the menu. And then I chose the poster image, was the one with the white space around it.
Yeah.
So that was one that we took a wee bit later. So it wasn't for the original season, it was a bit later on. But the
Gotcha.
thing there is that, again, I could print those without having to worry about getting it
True. Yeah, very cheap to print.
cropped and stuff like that.
You're right, yeah, because quite often they come with the white border around the edge if you don't go right to the edge.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So the white border is the white edge is the edge.
it's all part of the plan.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to add about Gary Starlight? I can't
Um,
think of much else that we
well,
haven't
no,
sort of
in
covered.
terms of the posters,
Yeah,
it's it's the challenge you've got, and this is something that everyone encounters, is how much information has to be on the poster and how much doesn't need to be on the poster. And the
mm-hmm.
key things with every show poster are: what's the name of the show? Where is it? When is it? How much does it cost? Those are the things.
Yeah,
And then why should I go see it?
yeah,
So, and then compulsory things. So you can see both of them have differing levels of pull quotes,
yep,
and the font for the location is a bit different in terms of size.
yeah,
Um, but it's a challenge, right? Because
it is.
you've got to try and get it down to the essential information, but you've
Mm-hmm.
also got to get people to want to go.
Yeah, that's the tricky thing is like it's like you're fighting against all the other things to do in
Yeah,
people's houses now, which the more
yeah,
time goes on, the more fun stuff we're going to have to do just in our houses.
yeah,
Having
yeah.
pull quotes helps though. I
Yes,
haven't haven't managed to get any of those myself yet, but I imagine they're the kind of thing where you just accumulate them over the course of doing a lot of
eventually.
shows. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And so shall we move on to your last post that you've
Sure.
given me? So this one, I was quite disappointed that I couldn't go and see, but I think it was on a Thursday, which was a no. I think I had Toastmasters on that day.
Yeah,
So the last poster is called Infinite Jeff,
that's right.
and it was done in 2019.
Yep, 4 years ago.
Wow, has it really been 4 years?
Yeah,
Wow, that's time has flown. I suppose it's the
I
pandemic,
know.
isn't it? That's three
I
years of
mean, yeah, 3.5 years if you want to get really fussy because it was October 2019.
true, yeah.
Yeah.
So the show was called Infinite Jeff, and it was
Yep.
a multiverse type show, which I suppose is
Yep.
what we were talking about before. Your career has been going for so long that
Yep.
you've now entered the multiverse phase of
Yeah,
Jeff.
very much. Very much
What
so.
I remember I did ask you, I think because I just did a show in the Nelson Fringe called Multiverse, and it
Yeah, yeah.
was basically just a storytelling show. And I remember asking you if it was okay for me to use a multiverse title. And as far as I remember, you you were fine with it because I did the
Oh
show in
yeah.
the end.
I mean, my idea was not an original concept either.
So what was the
Like
concept for the show?
the idea was where my life could have ended up if I'd made different choices. You know, if I had not become an improviser or comedian, what else could I have been? So it's like Jeff the author, or Jeff the rapper, or Jeff the motivational speaker, or Jeff the marketing. You know, full marketing into
Yeah.
advertising sort of thing.
And when you perform, I remember you were telling me that the audience
Yeah.
picked the ones they wanted to see. So how did you let them
To a
decide?
degree. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a big wheel on
Ah,
the screen,
gotcha.
and I would click spin the wheel, and that would stop on a type of Jeff that was there.
Yeah.
And then there would be a short character piece that had been created for that. Most of them were rehearsed, at least semi-rehearsed. There were very few fully improvised bits,
Hmm.
but it worked pretty well. It was a nice it was within that sort of improv structure, because one of the problems I have as a performer is I've spent so long being an improviser that if I try to do something that's scripted, more
Ah,
often than not, it doesn't have that same energy to it. Or at least that's how I perceive it.
yeah.
And so I wanted to keep that feeling of freshness and danger, to keep myself in the room and present.
So
Um,
that in
yeah,
that way you could have pre-ish rehearsed bits, but
yeah,
you didn't know when and at what point they were going to
yeah. And I
pop
didn't
up.
even know if, because there were more bits than I needed.
How many would you say that you prepared for the
I
show?
prepared about, I think I prepared about 7 or 8, and normally I only got 6
Huh,
at
okay.
most.
And when you were sort of knocking them together, were
Yep.
they based off of maybe ideas for stand-up routines you had in the past and you
Yeah.
kind of thought, because context kind of changes everything, doesn't it? Where
Yeah.
I give an example of something I learned recently is Milton Jones. You're aware of him, the one-liner comedian from the UK?
Not intimately, no.
Well, he's
No.
just a one-liner guy. He's
Yeah, yeah.
very sort of respected one-liner guy,
Cool.
and he has a joke where the it's a one-liner where he says he woke up with a strange woman in his room, and he said, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" And she said, "Nikita." And then the next morning, his radiator was gone, so it was a Nikita joke.
Yeah, yeah,
And he
yep.
said the joke never worked until he started doing it in his show called Milton Impossible, which was a Cold War spy um, era
Ah,
thing. And
cool.
suddenly Nikita sounds like a Russian,
Yeah, yeah,
what are
yeah,
they?
yeah, yeah. The
The
context.
KGB agent or something. And then all
Yeah,
of a sudden it worked. So I can imagine certain bits.
yeah,
You almost need to say to the audience, now imagine I'm a painter. And then you
yeah,
do
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
routine. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of what it was.
Hmm.
I've got a bit that I've done for a while, which is me doing marketing. I do a marketing bit, which is normally about 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how long I've got.
Yeah.
And it's super fun. But at the end of the 10 minutes, it's kind of like, well, I've kind of drained that. I've milked that a bit dry.
Right.
And whilst I could try and make half hour or a full hour show of me being a marketing scum, um, it would be the concept wasn't you'd get sick of the concept, or at least I'd
Yeah.
get sick of it.
Mm.
But it's that fine line, because you want comedy to have some honesty in it and some truth in it
Hmm.
and some, real life relevance, but you also want it to be a fight of fancy and the possibility for, you know,
Yeah.
humor to come from it.
Yeah. You don't want it to
And
be just real life,
yeah,
I guess
it's not
escapism.
therapy. It's not
Yeah.
therapy.
Yeah.
Although it'd be great if I got paid to tell people about my problems, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, so basically I just sort of came up with, well, I do this. Sometimes I do the rapping thing. Sometimes I do sort of an improv rap, quite a bit. I do this bit there. So what if yeah, those could be characters. And for a while, the poster concept was going to be all the different faces.
Yeah.
And so I did go to I did get so many different selfies slash headshots
Yeah.
of me wearing different makeup and hats and things like that, and making up.
Did you? I feel like I've seen some of them. Did you post some of them when you were leading up to the show?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I feel
Because I
like I
had
have
them and it was like,
seen.
God, what am I going to do with those?
Yeah,
And so I posted the concept photos that never made it there. But ultimately, it was just the black and white, minimalist, Steve Jobsy sort of.
I was gonna say that's what the vibe that I got was the Steve Jobs kind of.
It was just a photo I took, not for the show, actually. It was just a silly photo I made because I was wearing a turtleneck and it was like, I look like Steve Jobs photo looking serious down the camera. Um, right. And then it was like, well, what am I going to do a show for my poster? And there it was.
Yeah,
And so I went real minimalist, white background, black text,
you've used Impact, I think,
impact
right? Which is
font.
a classic, sort of timeless. It
Yep.
does feel very comic booky, which I think lends to it a little bit.
Yep. Well, basically, I turned it into the middle third as opposed to as opposed to
Yeah, you did, didn't you?
the full
Yeah,
width of the page. Basically, I shaved. It's basically half the width of the page,
yeah.
but moved to the center. So it's like
You've
middle
also,
two-thirds.
I'm not sure what the effect is. It full justify when you make the font,
Yep.
all the text go as far as it can and spread out.
Yes, but
Um,
not spreading out the letters. It's just the gaps.
yes, just the words.
Yep.
And that, what was there any particular reason? Because I mean, the fact that it says a comedy show, there's like quite significant gaps. Was that just you thought it looked like cool, or was there any kind of
Yeah, it looked better. Like I did a version where it was spaced out.
gotcha,
I did I did a sort of character based comedy show, but then that was too dense.
gotcha, yeah,
And also I wanted them to know it was a comedy show.
yes,
Because the photo in itself
feels a little TED
doesn't
talky, doesn't it? At times, that sort of
feels a
thing.
little TED talky. Yep. So that's why I added the quote at the top. Well, not the quote, but the tagline at the top. What if a comedian decided to do a high concept, ill-advised vanity project? Infinite
Well,
Jeff, a comedy show, just giving comedy twice in there.
yeah.
Um,
Sometimes you do have to add that underneath the title, especially in New Zealand here. I think people
yep,
need to beat them over the head with it a little bit at times.
yeah,
I do like
yeah,
the ill-advised vanity project. It reminds me a little bit of the one Dan Bain did where he did variations on the same joke. I think he
yeah,
had some similar wording in his blurb for the show.
yeah. Because we've got to undercut ourselves. Like we can't just go on there going, "This is going to be really
Yeah.
cool." We have to go, "Oh no, this is terrible.
Yeah.
Nah, it's going to go badly." Because then at least you're right,
Well, yeah,
or it's a pleasant surprise.
yeah, under promise over deliver is I
Yeah,
like to quite
the
often.
Kiwi, it's the New Zealand way.
That's true. Yeah. And so is this a show you would put on again, or was it you're happy to just get it under your belt and kind of move on from it?
I would, but very differently. I think that there were some bits that I really regretted not being able to do, or that I should have done at the end. I think that letting the audience or letting the wheel decide was a nice little cop out for myself, but I think that's just because I was too cowardly to properly structure a show.
Right. Because if you were going to
Um,
structure it yourself, you could build callbacks into other universes and stuff like
exactly.
that,
Yeah.
couldn't you? Yeah.
Yeah. And both times it did end with a little song that I'd actually taken the time to write in
Yeah.
reverse, which was like a little love song to my wife, which was very nice and sweet.
That is rather nice,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, she
W-
thought so,
When you
but she's heard it now.
changed
So
when you changed characters on the night, were you changing costumes and
yep,
stuff? Yeah, so
yep,
you were
to
doing
a
like
degree, to a
yeah,
degree. I'd nip behind a screen, and there'd be a little bit that I'd say from behind the screen whilst I was frantically doing
gotcha.
the costume change. So it'd either be a long intro or a short intro, depending on what bit it was.
Yeah, depending on how complicated the costume was.
Yeah, generally it was just like I think I was wearing the turtleneck the whole time,
Yeah,
which was a bad idea in October. It was quite warm.
I can imagine that got
And then I
pretty
was
rough.
throwing on a
Yeah.
jacket or something else over the top of it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there was
or a hat.
the guy who went before me and the venue in Nelson Fringe did a show called Real. I've forgotten what his last name was, but his first name was Chai.
Yeah.
And it was a three character play. And I think
Uh-huh.
he signified his changes by with lighting changes and then also
Oh no.
with his body language and all of that sort of thing.
Ah, proper
Um,
acting. That's a good job. That's a good
yeah,
choice.
but that sort of thing, if it wasn't for the costumes, it would be cool to be able to do that kind of thing with some of your infinite Jeffs. Like you
Yeah,
could
yeah,
have them interacting with each other and
Yeah,
all sorts of chaos towards the end. But again,
that would be the dream. Yeah.
you would have to sort of do that maybe
Yeah.
in a pre-recorded thing where you film all the bits and stitch them together or something. But yeah, that's a whole.
Yeah.
You can't really do that live, can you?
Yeah, well, I mean there's a concept I've had for a long time of a comedy set that is basically involves a lot of pre-recorded stuff.
Oh,
But
so
I've just
you
never been organized enough to do it.
so it would be the kind of thing where you would be responding to maybe like a video played on a projector or something like that.
I'll say it now because then if anyone uses it, I know that I've said it first. It's a
Yeah,
director's commentary.
of your own comedy set.
Yeah, so you know how they always had the DVD extras of someone doing,
Uh-huh,
oh, okay,
yeah.
so in this bit here we didn't have enough orcs on the day, so what those are in the background is just sticks. So it
Gotcha.
was like literally just me walking on and miming doing a comedy set
Uh-huh.
as a pre-recorded bit goes, okay, so I was performing tonight, but I obviously you can see here I'm sort of trying to get a little response from the crowd. This is called crowd work, and I was chatting to someone there, and you can see me trying to ask someone what they do, but when I hear it, I'm a little disappointed by their answer. I don't actually have anything funny to say, so I watch as I just do a little bit of a hand gesture, and so it would basically be on stage. It would literally just be me pantomiming slash miming,
That's really interesting.
saying
That's
comedy with the audio track there. But the thing there is that the audio track has to be so well planned out
it
in terms
does,
of
yeah.
how many beats do you have to give it for the laugh. There's no room for improv. There's it would be a very high wire comedy act,
What could be
which
fun
is why I
about
want to do it.
yeah, absolutely. One thing that I always think would be funny is I love that the dichotomy of you remember when like you'd watch an old kung fu movie that'd be dubbed and they would
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
rattle off this long sentence and it would just be like, I'm gonna beat you or something. You could
Yes, yeah,
really
yeah,
play
yeah.
around with that
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
be like, I told them calmly and politely to please stop talking, and then you're pantomiming you screaming at them and
Yeah.
yeah, all that sort of thing. That's
Shut
really
up.
funny.
Uh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Or and then I did toy with the idea of bringing audio, like actually talking at times, as if they turn up the audio and back
Yeah,
down.
that's funny.
But then again, that's the sort of that's yeah. I want to do it. I just haven't had the time slash energy slash drive to do it
You would
properly.
really have to plan that out and
Have to
get
do
your
it
production
really.
like
Yeah.
on point to make it
Well,
happen.
I've got access to those resources. No sweat. That's public library has a great podcast recording studio.
Do they really?
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Top
Like
floor of Tauranga, the makerspace.
oh
They've got
yeah, that
like
makes
full on
sense.
pro Adobe tools. That's where I made these posters, actually.
Oh,
I did it
wow.
on the Adobe Creative Cloud suite that they've got upstairs in Tauranga, fourth floor, Christchurch Public
Wow.
Library. Free for everyone to use.
That's a great plug there. Definitely get
Yeah,
after it.
they've got audio recording stuff. They've got 3D printers. They've got laminating printers. It's great.
I feel like libraries have done a great job of diversifying what you come in there for, right?
They are one of the greatest inventions in modern society. The
Yeah.
ability to share knowledge and to share resources. Like it's the ultimate sign of a healthy sort of society is when
Yeah.
those sort of things like
How good are your
when
libraries?
I
Yeah.
when well yeah because when ideas are being given like
Yes, you're
they're
right.
giving away ideas, they're giving away information and
Mm,
knowledge, and that's power. Like that is stuff that is going to people are going to read that, and some people are going to come out and go, actually, I hate libraries now. I think we should get rid of them, ban them, don't fund them.
yeah.
They'll read Ayn Rand and go, oh right, no, I think this is it'll turn them into terrible people. But it's also got all those other resources that they now know that we have to have in order to be a functioning society. They give free access to the internet. They give free access to software that allows you to design or produce or create things. So it's not just the consumption of ideas, but the development of ideas.
Yeah. They also let you hold meetings and such for
They
fairly
have
reasonable
meeting
prices, I
rooms.
think. Yeah.
They do. Yeah. They have meeting rooms, meeting spaces, quiet spaces.
I feel like calling them a library is almost doing them a disservice. Like they need like a
No,
a
if you
more
try calling
powerful.
them anything else, that causes all manner of
That's
problems.
true. Yeah, you get into some interesting
Yeah.
territory there.
I wrote a short story in a library over the course of a week. I just
Yeah.
had a week off to do some writing, and I wrote a 5,000 word short story.
And that was it about was it about libraries at all, or was it just kind of
No,
that was your
it was about a kid who found baked beans that made him fart
there you go.
really powerfully.
That's
That's the whole gag.
yeah.
But it has never been published, but it was still nice.
Well, you've always got that under your hat in case the whole
I
Gary
I
Starlight thing
do.
doesn't work out.
Yeah,
You
definitely,
can get
definitely.
that. shall we have a look at my first ever stand-up comedy poster? You've
Absolutely.
got that in the drive there, yeah.
I've
So
got it right there. I've opened it up.
let me just preface
Fukuoka's
this by
first
saying
open mic stand-up comedy.
I'd never designed a comedy poster up till this point,
Yep.
so I was really just flying by the seat of my pants
Yep.
making this. But yeah, what are some of your initial thoughts upon seeing this?
It's a very busy poster.
Yeah, there's a lot going
It's a
on.
very busy poster. I love the use of black space. Must have been
Yeah,
very expensive to print.
yeah, I think it
Um,
was.
I like that for the most part, it has two colors, black, white, and then red.
Yeah,
And then there's good old CC Cafe as the most powerful piece of info, or just
yeah,
just just getting your attention, right?
yeah,
And this is the big challenge of especially a lineup show.
hmm
There are so many names that you have to get there,
uh-huh,
and so many potential headshots
yes,
and faces and pictures. So you can see you've got the key information at the bottom left corner. It's on at that time, on this day, at this time, at this price, at this place.
yeah,
And you got the logo of the place, the logo of the production company nicely down there, which is cool. And it works pretty well in terms of the Nick Mills headshot
yeah,
because it's still black and white, but it's against a white background. That does draw your
mm,
eye quite nicely.
it does, doesn't it? Yeah,
Yeah. But the challenge you got with red, white, and black is that the red for Fukuoka's first open mic stand-up comedy is a little harder to read.
very hard to read. Yeah,
Yeah. So the first thing that I see looking at that is headlining.
yeah, I'm with you there.
I would have, sorry, are we pulling this apart and
Yeah,
critiquing
why
it?
not?
Or,
Why not?
I mean, the the
See what
the,
we
the
can
main
learn.
the main change I would have made would be leading, uh, taking Fukuoka's first open mic stand-up comedy and putting that in white,
Hmm.
and then having the name Nick Milnes and Ollie Horn in red,
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
because that would be they would be the names that stand out.
Yeah,
Yeah, that would be the
yep.
thing that stands up. At this case, Fukuoka's first open mic stand-up comedy, that's the dominant sort of text. But
But it's
it's
a bit of
in
a
the
mess. Yeah.
but it's a bit hard to see. You could have even flipped it over and had just the red drop shadow. Like, as much as
Yeah.
you like your drop shadow, have a red drop shadow.
Yeah.
Could be a drop highlight.
Yeah. Yep. You can definitely do that. We also had to have the funny, like, we don't have any quotes, so we're going to chuck a few
Yep,
quotes on there. Not my cup
yeah.
of tea.
Top
Ollie's
international
mum.
comedian we can afford. Not my cup of tea. Ollie's mum.
Yeah.
That's the whole Kiwi. Lower your expectations, folks.
Yeah.
And that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, lineup shows are tricky, especially when it is that sort of open mic or that sort of
Yeah.
emerging showcase.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, and that's when you make the call, are you establishing, because you can only use that poster once, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
I think for those sort of things, if it's not a massive name headlining, if it
You
is,
almost,
great, use their headshot, use their name.
yeah.
Perfect. If it's not, again, you can sort of jettison a whole stack of that information.
It is good how flexible web, like if you send them to a link tree or something like that, the
Yeah,
QR code stays the same, but
yeah,
all the information you're going
where they
to.
end up is different. Yeah,
The one thing I never quite got, I think this is just a comedy thing, but putting the country flags next to all the performers' names, that was one thing that Ollie insisted on, but I wasn't quite sure if that was going to be the kind of thing that someone would see and be like, "Whoa, there's two English people on the show. I'm gonna check it out."
yeah. I'll just go NZ, UK,
Mm.
BRA, Brazil. Is it
I th
Elena? Is
I
that
think it
somewhere else?
might even be Ukraine.
Ukraine.
I think so.
And then you've got UK later on, so that wouldn't have worked.
Yeah. Oh yeah, true. I wonder
Yeah,
what
the flag would be UKR is what it is in
Mm.
sport.
Yeah.
But yeah, um, that's the thing, right? It's a lot. You've got to have a lot of information on these sort of posters
Yeah.
because if you have one person, like, is it the headliner? Is it the MC? You've got that battle going on there. Who's more
Yeah.
important?
Uh-huh.
No
Yeah.
one that debate will never get resolved.
No.
Um, then you've got like, well, if we're going to have those people, we have to have the other acts on there as well. So then you've got that on there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting case when you're doing something, especially because like essentially everyone on the poster is unknown.
Yep.
Um International seems to be something that they much like the countries of origin, they sort of just chuck it on there because it seems more professional or legit or
Yeah,
something.
glamorous.
Yeah, exactly. Saucy.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so that was the first one. I really was writing close to the edge of the page. I would definitely want to chuck some deeper margins in if I was going to do it again. I have
I
thought
mean,
about
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I have thought about redesigning it. So what would I do now? But also I think it's just kind of
What
interesting to
would you do?
see. Well, the like you say, the title needs to be a little bit a lot clearer.
Yeah,
So I would
like it
probably
doesn't have a title.
no.
It is it is
Yeah.
it is Fukuoka's first open mic stand-up comedy. If
Yeah.
that's the name of your show, that's a lot of letters.
Yeah.
But that's coming from a guy who wrote something with like a 20-word title, so that's
I'd
fine.
I'd probably doing it now. I'd probably just have it as open mic comedy, maybe open mic stand up. See, I'd have a look and see how much space we've got to play with,
Yeah,
and then I'd probably just put it as a subtitle saying, you know, for the first time in Fukuoka, something like that. And
yeah.
then
And a little star.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, exactly. And I probably wouldn't put the open mic performers on because we were just, I think pretty much all of us were getting up for the first time. So no one would have
yeah.
ever heard of us. And the open mic is going to promote it to their friends anyway. So you just kind of, it's not super necessary.
If I can make some
Yeah, yeah,
suggestions,
please go ahead.
if you were redoing this, I would make the Comedy Fukuoka logo the biggest thing on the poster.
True. Yeah.
I think that's a cute logo. It
Yeah.
uses red and white really effectively.
Yeah.
You put Fukuoka's first, open mic stand up because Fukuoka is that a city?
Yeah, it was a city in Japan.
So you weren't planning on putting posters in like Tokyo or anything like
No,
that.
no,
So
I
that
don't think they
they'd
would do.
know that they were there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just say, yeah, I'd go Comedy Fukuoka and then the venue and things like that. Like
Mm,
that's you could even make that the top third of the
yeah.
poster would just be the logo Comedy Fukuoka.
Yeah. Yeah. I could see that.
And then you'd do headlining in the middle,
Hmm.
da, 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 and then the CC Cafe
Yeah.
down the bottom.
The one thing that I remember about putting that logo onto posters is the shape of the logo was just an absolute bane in my life because it has the big circle in the center. It would
Yep.
never quite sit well in the corner because you had all this weird space between I don't know, the sticks sticking out
Yeah,
left and
that's
right.
that's why I put it
Yeah,
as the dominant thing.
yeah, I think that would
Because
work quite well.
then the circle would become the sort of center of the
Hmm.
image.
Yeah, I think that would have worked better than better than what we had been doing. Because if
But
we
that's
do
okay. I
more of
mean,
these, I may show
yeah.
you some more from my rogues gallery of
I
old
mean,
posters.
I've got stacks of posters. Like you'll see my definite themes and stuff that I have a hand in designing as
Yeah,
well.
oh, that could be
Like
cool. We could do
that
more of
whole
these.
that whole imagery running down the center of the poster with a whole heap of space either side. That's something that comes up a few times.
That's a Jeff trademark.
It's not a trademark. It's just a trait.
Yeah,
I can't say I've trademarked it. I know that there are lots of other people that have done it much better than
gotcha.
I do.
Yeah,
But I love the design aspect of it because you are trying to get a lot of stuff, a lot of information across. And as it is, for a first poster, it's nice. It does
yeah,
what you'd expect a first poster to do. Is like I really want to honor all of our performers.
yeah.
I want to honor all their. It's got a slightly wacky font, which is
Hmm.
nice.
Yeah.
Like it's cool. It's cute.
I think yeah. We could have definitely done worse. Like, are you familiar with the Facebook group called Bad Comedy Posters?
Oh yeah, I love the one improv group or ska band.
That's
Because
really
of
fun.
the prevalence of improv in the 1990s,
Uh-huh.
you can just look and it's like improv group or ska band, and it's just like so
Is it a poster or is it the name that you're trying to guess?
it's a website.
I'm gonna
It's
Google it
it's
now
literally
and then
called
I'll
Ska or Improv on Tumblr.
gotcha.
And it is literally just the promo photos that they do for these people, and it is just so wacky. And
Yeah,
there's always we're being vaguely funny,
yeah,
or are we? And
yeah.
so you look at it and it's like, gosh,
That is
that's
brilliant. I'll have a good scroll of this later, but that's really funny.
you'll just be scrolling for forever
Yeah.
because
Oh, that's brilliant. So I guess we'll wrap it up there. Won't take
Yeah,
up too
yeah.
much more of your time, but thank you for chatting with me. That was a lot of fun. I think if you're keen to do more of these, I'm
Oh, that'd
definitely
be a treat. Yeah,
looking to create some more content. So
great.
where can the people out there find you on your socials?
Well, you can find Gary Starlight, who has his own
Of
Facebook
course he
page
does, yeah.
at facebook.com/, Gary Starlight Sings,
Oh, there
all
you
one
go.
word. I have a performer page, which is Jeff Clark Performer on Facebook, which is just Jeff Clark. What is it? It's Jeff Clark. Yeah, it's just Jeff Clark dash performer.
Gotcha.
And then I'm on Instagram as Komikaze Jeff, Komikazejeff.
I was going to ask you, is that an old podcast you used to do, or was that just a
It
play on words?
it was an old comedy show I used to do.
Ah, there you
It
go.
was an old comedy show I used to do called Komikaze, which was probably problematic then, and it's just an email. It's just the name that I've ended up stuck with socials.
Yeah,
And I'm also Kamikaze Jeff on Twitter, but Twitter is mostly just me retweeting interesting articles.
gotcha.
Instagram is more sort of photos of me before I do a show. So if you're not there in the next 15 minutes, you're probably going to miss out. But sometimes I do. Sometimes I do share promotional stuff for things that are coming up for me. But yeah, the Jeff Clark Performer and Gary Starlight Facebook pages are the main things to see me on.
Yep.
I will endeavour to have a website at some point, but not today
Yeah,
or at the time of this podcast being played, I
yeah.
suspect.
I'll chuck all of those down into the show notes of that. So one other
Yeah.
thing, I'm not quite sure what this podcast is going to be called. Like I've been doing it under the poster podcast,
Yep.
but I sort of went through a bit of a thing when I did my quarterly and evaluation where I decided I
Yep.
didn't want to necessarily limit myself to just posters. So
Yep.
I'm gonna. I've got a few. I've got a couple of ideas. I was thinking of curiosity might be all right because I just like learning about things.
Yeah.
And then the other one, pretty standard, maybe Rudcast, and like each it'll be a umbrella term, and then it'll
Oh, yeah.
have this is a poster episode with Jeff Clark, or I might do one about talking about old video games, or I think it would be cool to do a bit like what Dan Bain's doing now, where we
Yeah.
rewatch episodes of an old TV show and go through them. So as of right
What,
now, I'll
how
go
about
ahead.
how about riddle me this
That's
question
not bad.
mark?
That's
And
quite
it's like,
nice.
oh, I'm just asking questions. And today we're asking, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah. That's not bad at all. I'll have to make sure that hasn't been done because the tricky thing is I'll have an idea and then someone already has a Podsprout account with it. So I go, dang it, I can't get in there. But yeah, I'm not quite sure what it'll be. It'll probably be a few
um,
weeks before the pod comes out.
there is no riddle me this. I've
No,
just Googled it. Doesn't
not
exist.
bad. Riddle me this,
Yeah.
3 words. That's nice.
Yeah.
Not
It's
too
got
many
your surname in it.
letters.
Got
Riddle
your
me
surname in
this.
it. You could fit riddle me this question mark
Yeah.
in the 2 lines.
Damn, that could be an interesting episode. I'll provide you some album cover ideas, and you
Yeah,
give
yeah,
me
yeah.
the you give me the tips on optimizing it.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Like layout of a poster is so interesting because it's all about the journey that the eye goes on and
Yeah,
that the brain processes information as well.
yeah.
It's like, what is it? Okay, that's interesting. Why should I? When is it? Where is it? Like what's the narrative you want them to be asking? Are you
Hmm.
wanting to answer the questions before they ask them, or do you want them to ask the questions and then suddenly find the answers? Like
That's
how
true.
you guide an eye through a thing because there's a thing that catches their eye, and then it's where the eye goes from there.
Yeah,
It's like the Star Wars text comes in from the bottom, really
yeah,
nice,
yeah.
but it starts with a big thing that then shrinks back in the background, and then the text comes up over the top. It's
You're
like,
right. I'd never
you
quite
know,
thought about it that way, but that is you're almost predicting what questions they're going or what they're going to be thinking when they see each element of the poster.
yeah,
That's a good way to think about it.
it is because it is a mission for the eyes,
Hmm. I like it.
and also, is it a poster that they're going to be driving past, or is it a poster they're going to have time to stop and look at?
Yeah, sometimes
Like
you don't have that
a
time.
billboard, they've got plenty of time to see it. And they've
Yeah,
got time to sit and read it, and then you can have the info. But if it's posted that they're going to drive by, 3 words, four
yeah.
words, maybe they'll
Needs
take
to be
it.
super
Like,
direct, doesn't it?
oh, that face, that name,
Yeah,
great. That's
yeah.
what they get. And then they get home and they'll Google it. And that's the thing with posters. Like, that's the thing. You want them to be intrigued enough to then Google it and
That's true.
find it.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, then you've done your job.
Okay. Well, appreciate your time,
No worries.
Jeff.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. We'll have to bring you back for another one.
That would be great.
And so that was the end of my interview with Jeff Clark. I really enjoyed talking to Jeff. I learnt quite a few things from him, actually. And I even found myself really just getting into the podcast when I was listening to it and editing it before. I just found myself kind of getting lost in it and forgetting that it was me talking to someone. And like I teased at the end, of last week's podcast, you get to see the birth of the name for this podcast. Well, I had it written down as a possible name, but hearing Jeff talk about it kind of reinvigorated the idea in my mind, and it grew on me, and I decided that it would be the ideal name for the podcast. It's been a minute since I've done a proper life update, so I will I'll catch the 12 listeners up on what's been going on in my life. So since the last time I did one of these, used to be called After Dark, but I think it's just now a life update, I went to the Nelson Fringe Festival, which was my first Fringe Festival ever, and it was a really fun experience. I had an awesome 3 days up in Nelson. Like I mentioned in the podcast with Jeff, I performed a show called Multiverse, which was basically a solo version of that improvised storytelling show this one time. In case you've never seen that before, audience members submit a real story that happened to them into a little Halloween cauldron that I have, and I take them out one at a time. I add a few of my own stories into the cauldron at the start of the show, and I perform all of the stories that I draw out as if it was really my story and a real piece of stand-up. And this was a lot of fun because you quite often get a few really wild card stories. There's a lot of duds, but the two audiences that I had up in Nelson were full of interesting stories, and they were two really, really funny shows. I had to take a little bit of an ego hit, I suppose you would call it, in my audience sizes. So the venue I was in, Studio One Nelson, absolutely love that venue. If you're a performer wanting to do something up in Nelson, I can't recommend them enough. It's a great little venue. It's alcohol free, which can be tricky, but for what I do, alcohol free works just fine. And the owner, Jasmine, who I actually got to meet up at the Fringe, super lovely, super kind, and it's really reasonable to hire, really cheap as well. So I can't recommend them enough. Definitely check them out if you're looking to do a show there. And our Studio One seats about 50 people, I think. And I actually basically drove up to Nelson without knowing how many sales I had. I think I checked on the Wednesday night before I drove up, and it was pretty disheartening. I think I had 4 sales on the Thursday and 3 sales on the Friday, and a couple of those were comp tickets. So I was really getting concerned that it was going to be a long weekend at the office. But luckily, people came out, and on the first night I had 12 audience members in, and then on the second night I had a really surprising 17 audience members in. I was really happy about that. And something else I didn't expect, but I was also really grateful for, was that the average age of my audience was like 30. I've heard in the past that Fringe audiences tend to be very old and very white, but I think maybe just due to the fact that my show started at 9 o'clock, I got this awesome mix of people. A lot of foreign people, a lot of people from the UK, a few people from Ireland who I think might have been locals, and there was a guy from the Czech Republic in there. It was just amazing. Like, I was so happy with the diversity and young age range of my audience. I learnt quite a bit about how to promote a Fringe show during my time in Nelson. Like, I bought a package of posters that you can do through the Fringe, which I probably wouldn't do next year. I think I'll just print my own flyers off and go around asking cafes if they can put them up in the window for me. Not exactly something that everybody could do. Like, I have the background in graphic design, so I'm quite lucky in the sense that I can DIY that if I want to, but I just don't think I got the return on posters that I had hoped for. They looked really nice up in the box office, but I only saw a couple of them up there. So I think next year I'm going to go get a better, hopefully slicker video to put on Facebook, and then DIY my own flyers and maybe even go up a day earlier and do a bit of barking, hang up some flyers, go around the hostels and that kind of thing to promote. And I think next year I'm just going to do a straight stand-up show. If I'm still doing my Japan material, then I'll do that as a fringe show. But I feel like in between now and then, I'm probably going to record my Japan special. So if you've heard, I mean, people have been hearing me do these jokes about stuff that happened to me in Japan, which I had to accept recently that this is going on 10 years ago now. When did I go up? I went over there when I was 22, and I turned 30 this year. So I'm starting to feel like it might be a little bit sad that I'm still talking about all these stories that happened when I was over there. So I was thinking this year, that'll be one of my focuses, is to get that recorded and just put it up on YouTube for free. And that way I can retire the material, and then I'm not that guy that's doing 8-year-old stories about his early 20s OE, which I think going into your 30s still doing that, I don't know. I just feel like that dude who's clinging to the past, who can't move on. So I need to record it, put it up online. A lot of it is some of my best material, so that'll be great to have online. People can see some of the best stuff I've been working on all over the world, hopefully, and then I can move on and I can start working on my second hour. So follow me on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube. It's all Taylor Riddle Comedy. So the other major life update, and this is a big one, is about a week ago, I decided that my RSI pain was... but I was at my limit, basically. Anyone who knows me in my personal life has heard me moaning about my hands for the last... I think I looked it up, and it started in September last year. I'll give a very short recount of it. I think it was September last year, I started noticing that my hands it was mainly my thumbs, were getting really sore after a long week at work. And considering most of what I did was clear cutting and very cut and paste sort of design work, I think it was just all the repetition gave me a form of repetitive strain injury. I booked a week off work to hopefully give myself a bit of time to recover, and then it's just by chance I happened to catch COVID in that same week, so I ended up getting all my sick days back, and we had like we used the COVID subsidy for those sick days, so that worked out okay, and my hands were better for a little bit, but they've just been getting worse and worse, and especially lately, I've been telling people that it feels like I've been living to work, not working to live. Because what would happen is I'd finish up a week at work, my thumbs and my hands would be aching. I basically couldn't do anything on the computer all weekend. I just had to rest. I've been seeing a physiotherapist. I've been doing stretches constantly. Been doing things in the gym to help strengthen them. I've been doing little rubber band exercises. I've been trying anti-flame cream. I've been using a Theragun, a massage gun. And I think ultimately just what's happened is I used them too much, and the small muscles in my thumbs and my hands got strained, and they just haven't been able to recover with me working full time. So I spoke to my manager, and he was really sympathetic about it, and my boss and everything, and they tried to take some steps to lighten the load on me so that I wasn't bearing so much. So basically my workload was lightened to see if it would aid me in recovering. So I tried sticking it out for another... I was trying to do a month, but after about 2 weeks, I was just at my limit. I can't do it anymore. My quality of life was just beginning to suffer. And I mean, all of my hobbies involve PC and video games and computers. And so it was really wearing on me to finish work on Friday or Thursday. They started giving me Fridays off to try and give me an extra day to recover. But finishing work for the week and then basically just waiting until Monday and hoping that my hands weren't feeling as achy by the time Monday came around. And on the week that I handed my notice in, it was 9 a.m. Monday, I was already really achy and feeling shooting pains going down my thumbs. So I just decided it was time to pack it in, and I'm basically just going to be unemployed for a little while. It'll be my first real holiday in God knows how many years. Obviously you take like bits and pieces of time off here and there, but I never really felt like I had any extended time off from work. So I think it's been a little bit of mental burnout as well as physical burnout. So I'm basically just going to allow myself about 6 months to try and recover from this, see how much I can recover. I'm not going to do a whole bunch. I'll probably keep doing the podcast and obviously keep doing stand-up and writing jokes and everything like that. But I probably won't be doing a lot of video editing because that tends to flare up my hand pain. And the plan is basically just try and be as healthy as I can, try and get as much sleep as I can, try and eat right, try and go to the gym as much as I can, keep stretching, keep doing yoga, and just not stress out too much, and get caught up in that FOMO, capitalism, creative side hustle, feeling of that I should be hustling all the time. And I think that's going to be really good for me. I am a self-admitted workaholic, and I think it's just gotten to the point where the way I was working and the pace that I used to do things at is just not sustainable. You know, it was sustainable when I was in my early 20s and I had relative youth as a kind of buffer. Now that I think about it, I feel like I'm the guy who used to go out on a bender every weekend, and when he was in his 20s he could bounce back, he wouldn't even get hungover, but now he's in his 30s and he's realizing he has to actually start doing things like hydration and getting a good night's sleep after a bender, otherwise he's just not going to be able to handle it. So the other good thing about me having some time off from work, and this was through no fault of work, but it was so hard to travel for shows when I was working Monday to Friday sometimes, because even though you would think that a lot of stand-up gigs happen on the weekend, but weirdly enough, everything that I wanted to get on and I was getting offered to do, everything was happening between like Sunday and Wednesday, which were pretty much the 3 days I absolutely couldn't afford to take off at work, because we had a magazine that was going to print on Wednesday. So, as you can imagine, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday were quite full-on days, and it was very hard to get time off because the team would suffer if one of us was out. So one thing that I'm really looking forward to is finally being able to travel during the week for shows. Like Ben Tito Caldwell from DIY Comedy has been offering me these like 4 to 5 day tours up in the North Island that I've been absolutely dying to do, but just haven't been able to get off from work the right amount of days. So that's one thing I'm absolutely going to pounce on. And when I'm up there, I'm definitely going to try and do a lot of podcasts with the local comics, because Palmerston North alongside Dunedin feel a bit like comedy second homes to me. They've both really embraced me and made me feel welcome when I've been gigging up there. So I have a lot of fondness in my heart for Palmerston North, as well as Dunedin, but I think it's because Palmerston North was probably my first road gigs, so they'll always have a kind of special place in my heart. And then of course I'll try and make it up to Auckland and Wellington, everything like that, but that's basically a given at this point. You have to go to Auckland if you want a gig. So I think I've rambled enough for now. That's basically a general life update as to what's going on, so you can expect more podcasts more frequently. I've got one in the works now. Trubadet, a local stand-up comic and musical comedian, something like that. I'm not quite sure what her proper title is. She was telling me the other day that she has been dying to tell somebody about all of the drama from the band Fleetwood Mac, and given that that's a band I have absolutely no idea about anything to do with that band, I think that's going to be a really exciting podcast. I'm quite excited to record that one, so that might be the next one. We shall see how everyone's schedules line up. But as always, thank you so much for listening, and I will catch you next time.